Yes. Not that it makes it much easier, but were you
Oh, no, Tuesday. This is just down the road. So, yeah.
Yeah,
We just can mark it right now. So, my organization while we were on the meeting. Because that all the other so, great. Like, honestly, I am tired. So now, even just 5 years ago, it would have been totally, different. So it's been a thing, but I mean, we can at least afford a home. There's probably some people that are what? I love your mask. Where did you find it? Trying not to have a lot of oh, exactly. Oh, nice.
The first box is great, the second box is great.
And they were
Like the little elastic.
and I didn't want to buy that.
But I like those are nice ones. The ones that fit, the ones that were elastic and flat were fine. It just didn't fit.
And we're just going to rent for a little bit.
Oh my God. I didn't get the memo, I'm great. Well, they're happy. It's not like
And in a few years, I'm really not getting just right now. It's just a lot. I love where it is. It's just a lot of wrong. Walk the bus, everything. So we're going to love it.
yeah, that's like one for 1 year.
No, right now I'm just a little bit. It's just I'm just tired. I basically work.
you try to do as much as you can yourself?
Right. Because otherwise we won't. It's and that's where all short. It's fine. I mean, it just takes time. Yes. It's all cosmetic exactly.
My back way down.
I'm looking at the M2s.
And then I was like running through and all of a sudden it's all like I started the ass, like I am Jefferson, and it was like that feeling of like the bottom of the
Just have like that
because I put it where the road was not like, I gotta do it.
No one think that's the point, but when you add them all up, it becomes
You don't want to do that after you've been. So we were painting first. So we took all the window treatments down and we were curtains. So heat gets out, stuff like that. And it's bricks, so it's not easy to put up window treatment.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to this service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great pleasure and honor of serving as minister of this congregation. Here we are striving to be as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert, and that means that whoever you are, whoever you've been, and whoever you are trying to become on the path to becoming, we invite you to bring your whole self here and now. We are a covenantal community, which means very simply that we make promises to each other about how we are together when we are together. And in this time of continuing pandemic, when we're here in worship and in concurrent religious education, we are still wearing masks, so go grab one if you don't have one on. And if you're attending worship in person with us, our hope is that you are vaccinated as you can be. That's part of our covenant with one another. If you're unwilling to be vaccinated, you're welcome to join us for worship. We just ask that you join us on YouTube next week. I extend a special welcome to any visitors or new folks among us this morning and invite you to fill out a guest information card. If you're joining us on YouTube, our administrator, Mary Weiss, will post that in the chat right now. And if you're here in person, we hope you'll join us for social hour after the service, out the doors to kind of behind you to your left. There will be a welcome center there with clipboards with yellow pieces of paper, and if you want to stay in touch with us, just go ahead and fill one out. And we will have social hour right after the service in Goddard Hall, which is just through those doors I indicated before. There will be coffee, iced tea, lemonade, and sometimes some snacks, and always good company. And a few announcements before we get much further into our service. Today is our parent orientation for our Whole Lives OWL classes, which means that there'll probably be some folks from the community here on campus. So if you, as people who know this campus, see people who don't look like they know this campus, it would be wonderful if you could greet them and show them to either Emerson or Servetus. And if you don't know where those rooms are, why don't you accompany them there anyways? It'll be a lovely sign of hospitality for visitors on our campus. And the UU quilters are having a drawing for the quilt that is behind you next to the front office door. It's the one kind of with the crosses on it and the various colors and triangles. The drawing for it is next Sunday, and see, I think Susan Call, or maybe some other folks, Susan's in the teal here, see Susan Call to buy some tickets at Social Hour if you'd like to enter the raffle for that beautiful quilt. Also, the Social Justice Council will meet at 12:30 after worship. That's an open meeting. So if you're curious about what justice work is happening through our members, go ahead and attend. It's going to be 12:30 in the awareness room. And also drawing your attention that if you're serving on a committee or group, you probably got word of this, but I want to say it verbally out loud too, that we are having a volunteer fair on February 5th. See Carolyn Saunders or email her, get in touch with her for more information about that. It's going to be an opportunity to have a table for whatever your group or committee is, and to tell people who might be interested in joining what you do and what you're looking for in terms of new folks joining. To continue our welcome of one another into this space, I invite you now to turn to a neighbor, hopefully one that you haven't had breakfast with recently, and tell them about what dignity means to you. It's a really good icebreaker, right? Tell them about what dignity means to you and ask them what dignity means to them. Our words for a call to worship are called "You Are Welcome Here" by Reverend Dr. Deborah Hafner. She writes, "You are welcome here. If you are straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, intersexual, demisexual, pansexual, or asexual, or resist labels completely, you are whole and welcome here. If you are transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, or cisgender, you are whole and welcome here. If you are confused about your sexuality, have questions, struggle in an intimate relationship, or struggle because you aren't in one, you are whole and welcome here. If you have had an abortion or an unintended pregnancy, given up a child, had a miscarriage, have AIDS or HIV, struggle with infertility or sexual dysfunction, you are whole and welcome here. If you have been a victim of sexual assault, sexual harassment, or sexual abuse, you are whole and welcome here. If you've made a sexual decision or had behaviors that you regret, you are welcome here, and we will help you offer restorative justice and healing. Your sexuality is holy and sacred and an integral part of who you are, and you are whole and welcome here. As Unitarian Universalists, we will side with you, love you, and fight for your rights, because we seek to create a world where sexuality and sexual diversity is celebrated with holiness and integrity. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. My name is Celeste Rogers, and I am your worship associate this morning. Will everyone please join me in our chalice lighting words by Reverend Deanda Vandiver. We light this chalice, symbol of our faith alive in this world, naming our vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community. Now, if you have a chalice or candle at home, please light it as we light our chalice here in Holland.
The first song this morning is one that I will ask you to eventually rise and sing. It's one we haven't sung in about 4 years, and it's not in the hymnal, so most of you don't know it. So I'm going to sing the first verse. I'll ask you to join me on the first verse. AV team, I forgot to tell you to dwell on the first verse slide a little longer. I apologize. We'll stay here for just we'll go through this slide twice. So let me sing it once to you, and then join me on the second time. Will you rise as you are in body, in spirit, or as you are able? There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Join me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Fires burning, there are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, the mountain. I will rebuild the mountains. This I know. This I know. I will rebuild the mountains. This I know. I will rebuild the mountains that they find their way to me. I will rebuild the mountains. This I know. This I know. I will rebuild the mountains. This I know.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and concerns each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. On a personal note, I was horrified to learn this morning of yet another mass shooting, this time in Monterey Park, California, that killed at least 10 people. And I also hold in my heart the people of Ukraine who continue to suffer under war and atrocities committed by the Russian troops and mercenaries. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let us remember those desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to those used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 72778971. If you are here in person and cannot access the internet, you can go to Brian Moon and he can type in your joy or sorrow for you. If you are here in person, you are welcome to come up to the table and put a stone in the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. The pebbles create ripples of hope. Prayers for my daughter's friend, 17 years old, whose father entered hospice yesterday. In deep sorrow for all those affected by gun violence and hatred. Amen. Prayers for Kyle Doan, the 5-year-old swept away by floodwaters almost a week ago, that he is found. Good to have family visiting. Sorrow for all those we saw these past weeks living in and begging on the streets in Mexico. Stephen Kranak. May we acknowledge the joys and sorrows shared and those that remain unspoken by keeping a moment of silence held in the warm embrace of community.
Will you continue in that warm embrace with me and enter into a spirit of meditation or prayer or contemplation, whatever is your own way of centering? And hear these words of prayer from Reverend Julia Hamilton called Abortion as a Blessing. Abortion is not just a deeply personal and choice and fundamental right, but it can also be a blessing. It is a life-saving medical procedure. It is a choice that can help heal from violence. It is a doorway to a different life. It is a blessing to so many people who, for whatever reason, are not in a position to have a child. So I say thank you and bless you to all the doctors and nurses and clinicians who have provided abortion care, often at great personal risk. And I say thank you and bless you to all those who have stood at the doors of clinics and escorted patients with love and compassion in the face of hate and shame. And I say thank you and bless you to all the friends, partners, and family members who have supported loved ones through the process. I say thank you and bless you to all the elected officials and activists and organizers who fight year after year to keep abortion legal, safe, and available to all who need it. And I say thank you and bless you to all of you here today who have had an abortion. You are loved and supported in your choice and in the life that you live today because of that choice. And I also say thank you and bless you to all those who very much wanted that child and made the choice to have an abortion to preserve your own life. You are loved and worthy of that life you chose. We see how your grief comes along with your beauty. As we go forth from this moment and out into this beautiful and heartbreaking world, we are renewed by the strength we have found here in one another. We will fight shame with love. We will fight violence with compassion. And we will fight language of domination with songs of liberation and grace. And we know that we are not singing alone.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle. How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
I can hardly ever sing that song without crying. Now, an offering will be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you are joining us on live stream, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around now with the offering baskets to collect your donations. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to these people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission.
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sister, let's go down, won't you come on down? Oh, sister, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, won't you come on down? Oh, brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way.
Our reading this morning is called Protectors of Agency by Unitarian Universalist Deborah Weiner, distributed last week by the Braver, Wiser newsletter from the Unitarian Universalist Association. Deborah writes, "My mother, Vera Weiner, was one of the founders of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. In the 1960s, she, along with a group of activist Unitarian and other progressive women, were leaders of Planned Parenthood League of New Haven. My mother became president during the time that the Griswold v. Connecticut case reached the U.S. Supreme Court. What drove it there was the police closure of the clinic dispensing birth control, with the Planned Parenthood League supporting the notion that the right to privacy included women having agency over whether they wished to become pregnant. After the clinic was raided and shut down, the Planned Parenthood League board was determined to continue their operations. They set up an office in the basement of our house, a few miles outside New Haven. The windows covered with cardboard, typewriters set up, boxes of diaphragms and gel and birth control pills everywhere, and nurses on staff to provide the birth control upon request. The Planned Parenthood women would comb the newspapers for birth announcements. They contacted the new mothers with congratulations and offers of birth control. Meanwhile, I was warned not to tell anyone what was going on. I was told that I could result in my mom getting arrested, so I kept quiet, and the basement operation continued for some time. When the Griswold v. Connecticut ruling came down from the Supreme Court in 1965, there was a huge celebration in New Haven. The victory resonated across the United States and changed our understanding of a woman's right to privacy. My mother and her friends, almost all of whom were UUs, were heroes because of their determination to act for access to birth control even when the state barred it. A few years later, in 1973, Roe v. Wade became law as well. As I was growing up, I viewed these occurrences as a logical progression from the right to privacy to the right of a woman to hold agency over her own body. Little did I know what the dystopian society we now live in the United States would have in store for us. The blood of my mother runs in my veins, and as a Unitarian Universalist religious professional, the call to continue the work for freedom and justice rings in my ears. My mother's work is not done. It's mine to do, and yours, and ours, without end, because to pause imperils our freedom.
"50 years and 7 months minus 2 days. Today, it has been 50 years since the passage of the landmark Roe v. Wade case by the U.S. Supreme Court. As many know, but I will reiterate, this case made abortion more accessible for people with uteruses in every state in our country. And just 7 months minus 2 days, we are just 7 months minus 2 days away from that decision which overturned that crucial federal protection. And to broaden this picture before 1973, abortion had been practiced by people with uteruses for hundreds, if not thousands of years. In this country, up until the mid-19th century, abortion was actually relatively commonplace, up until what was called quickening, when the person carrying the fetus feels it move for the first time, which is usually around 4 or 5 months, sometimes later, maybe a little earlier, but not much. It wasn't until the 1860s when Horatio Storer identified that white people were not having enough babies to colonize the yet-to-be colonized Western states that the moral argument against abortion was born. Storer became aware that white women were having abortions in order to advance in professional careers. Oh gosh, that would be hard. He thought that was wrong. He wanted them to have more babies, to stay home and raise those children, and to complete the white colonizer conquest of this country. Storer nearly single-handedly took the profession of midwifery away from women and gave it to medical school-trained men who formed the field of gynecology. And simultaneously to that, he began an ultimately very successful campaign to create the moral argument against abortion. And we, nearly 150 years later, are living in the shadow of that moral campaign. We are living in a post-Roe country, too. Before Roe fell, I had never lived in a country where abortion was not at least in part legal in every state I had lived in. So the stories of how you had survived pre-Roe was in place. They have bolstered me, helped me imagine these past few months. I know that many of you have lived in or know about those times. You carry your own stories like Deb Weiner's. You saw your ancestors fight the battle for abortion access, and now the mantle is ours, in our hands. Hearing the stories of how people survived when people didn't, it helps me imagine what is possible now, what we can do together now. The personal stories of receiving abortions in a pre-Roe country, I hold those too tenderly and gratefully, because I know so many people who lived through to tell their story, many of you I know. And I also know that far too many people did not survive to tell those stories, and we grieve for them today. As someone with a uterus of childbearing age, I cannot tell you the amount of time I've spent planning the past few years, because this fall of Roe was inevitable. I cannot tell you the amount of time I have spent planning, because you know me, I'm a spreadsheets and planner girl, A, B, C, D, E, plans for what I would do if I needed to get that medical care. If that moment comes when I need to make that choice, I like to know that I have a few options thought out a little bit. Of where I can get care for myself, of what I can do with my kid while I'm getting that care, of who can provide the aftercare for me afterwards. Thankfully for now, our state has landed, I hesitate to say it, but on the side of love and agency for now. Here now, many of you, have access to the necessary medical care of an abortion if we should ever need one while we live here. But do you know that we who would receive an abortion in Arizona now would still have to sit through legally required readings of misinformation in order to receive those services? Even before Roe fell, even before people who had the choice here in Arizona were making their choice in other places, because those states didn't force them to listen to misinformation, because those states had people who could care for their children, because those states, or elders, while they recovered, because those states seem to care a bit more about the bodies of people with uteruses. I know because I've talked to people who've left Arizona for abortions pre-Roe falling. The federal privacy of Roe is just one piece of the reproductive justice puzzle. It's a really important piece. Some people describe it as the floor, but it's just one piece. Sister Song, the leading advocate for reproductive justice in the United States, it's based out of the southern states and led primarily by Black women. So imagine if Planned Parenthood is at the forefront of advocating for people getting access to abortion services, Sister Song is helping us imagine a world where we affirm the full agency and dignity of people to have the families and lives they choose, the full agency and dignity. Sister Song defines reproductive justice as, quote, the moral right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. So it's more than just abortions. It's affordable childcare. It's affordable elder care. It's communities safe from state violence. It is quality and free education for all kids. It's a system, a country which supports families and affirms everyone's right to build the family they choose or not. Roe is an important part of this picture, but it is not the full reproductive justice solution. Even before Roe fell, we were struggling as a country to support families and children. 11.6 million children were living in poverty in our country. That's 16% of children. We couldn't keep Black and brown children or their parents safe from police, ICE, Border Patrol, and other agents of state violence. Arizona public schools, as we know, were ranked among the worst in the country due to intentional underfunding of education to support the privatization of schools. So we were struggling to enact reproductive justice even with Roe. And now the floor's fallen out. Which is not to say we should stop fighting for abortion to be truly accessible to all people, because the floor is really important to a building. We should keep in that fight, and we should see that the horizon of reproductive justice is much, much further away than Roe or something like it being reinstated. While we get to work to get kids out of poverty and to eliminate state violence, to get our schools better funded, we Unitarian Universalists are uniquely positioned to make our values known in the struggle for abortion access. The first principle of Unitarian Universalism calls us to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And to me, that means also affirming their agency to determine what happens or doesn't happen to their body. The very beginning of our values calls us to affirm the basis of the vision promoted by Sister Song and other progressive reproductive justice organizations. Unitarian Universalism contributes to the work of reproductive justice through OWL, Our Whole Lives, which is our comprehensive sexuality and health education curriculum for people of all ages, 5 through 95. This congregation is one of a few that I know of that truly offers OWL to you, whether you're 5 or 95, and whether you're short or tall. Beyond OWL, we can contribute to the work of reproductive justice by giving to your local abortion fund. The one I always recommend is the Tucson Area Support Collective, TASC, TASC. Beyond that, we can contribute to the work of reproductive justice by advocating for better funding for public education, advocating for free and affordable childcare and elder care, advocating for anything that will allow families easy access to the support they need. However can we do all that, you might ask? It is a lot, and I won't pretend that it's not. If we are to continue to take on the monumental task of dedicating our advocacy and actions to true reproductive justice, as defined by Sister Song, we are going to need the fuel of a holy rage. Reverend Darcy Roque is a Unitarian Universalist minister and PhD candidate in New Orleans, Louisiana, and she's also been engaged in the struggle for reproductive justice there. After nearly dying from an ectopic pregnancy that multiple medical professionals refused to acknowledge, she began to be fueled by a holy anger, holy rage. She described that the child she was miscarrying was a long hoped for child, and yet she needed to get an abortion in order to save her own life. But because she lived in a place where abortion access was sketchy at best, multiple medical professionals would not refer her to the services she needed. Reverend Darcy lived to tell this story, but she nearly died because of the inaction. And she was a white woman navigating a medical system that tilts strongly in favor of her in terms of race, at least. Holy rage became the fuel for Reverend Darcy's living. How might you become fueled by your own holy rage? Or how might you rekindle that holy rage you have been feeling for a long time? How might those stories you carry from pre-Roe era and today of heartbreak and hard decisions of access and no access become kindling for your own fire? I'm going to ask you to carry these questions with you as we move towards the end of our service, because we're trying something new today. We are going to welcome our children in soon. Soon. They're on their way, we hear. And when our kids are here, we are going to hear a story and sing a song hear some words, and then I'll go to social hour together. But as we proceed, you're going to keep that question in the forefront of your mind. How can you kindle your holy rage?
So they're on their way, in theory. Sorry, there we go. Sorry. Habits are hard to break. They're on their way, and I'm going to give them this instruction when they get here too. But I'll give it to you now so that you are well and prepared, because sometimes grown-ups take a little longer. So here's the instructions. There's going to be certain points in this story where I need you all to reply to me. And here's your line. You probably know it well. You're going to say, "It's not my problem." Can you try it with me? I'll point at you and you say, "It's not my problem." We got it. It's almost like you say that every now and then. It's not my problem. Okay. Waiting for them. It's a lot of pressure on the kids. Would you go look? Yeah, thank you. They should be on their way over. We don't have very many today.
Not my problem.
I think we're going to ban that after this. You don't get to say that anymore. No, this is it. Get it out of your system now. We're done. We were, but you told me we were going to be late, so this is an experiment we're trying.
So what did your neighbor say dignity was earlier? What did you learn about that word? Anybody learn anything about what dignity means? Well, what do you think dignity means? Shout the answers to me. Respect.
Following your own moral compass.
Following your own moral compass. What else did you hear? What else did you share earlier?
Humanity.
Honoring the wholeness of the person, humanity. Ingrid, I see you pulling down.
Yeah, being comfortable with yourself.
Being comfortable with yourself.
Having control over your own decisions.
Having control over your own decisions, which requires some external ability to make those decisions, right? There has to be something external allowing that sometimes. What else? Accommodation. What about for my quiet section? Quiet section is good.
Oh, we got a couple.
Perfect.
The rest are little ducklings on their way.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for coming. Hi, guys. Yay, hi, Joseph. Hi, Rowan.
Okay, come on up. If you want to come sit here, or you can go sit with your grown-ups. Hi, Rowan. You want to sit here? What did you bring for me? What is it?
Honey.
It's honey. This makes me think about our story today. Do you want to sit here with us? Okay, I'm going to let you hold the honey.
But, where should they sit?
You can sit here, or you can sit up here with your mama.
I feel like sitting.
Perfect. Everybody should sit where they want to sit. Okay, so the grown-ups, before you all got here, they learned a sentence that I'm going to point to everybody and they're going to say it. So the grown-ups are going to practice it one more time. It's not my problem. Wonderful. And the honey that you brought me today reminds me of our story. This is a very old tale that starts once upon a time, so it might not be true, but it starts once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a great queen, and she sat on the balcony of her castle looking out amongst her big city. There was a big city that she was the queen of. She was eating her breakfast. It was rice cakes, and she would slather the honey on it, and she would slather butter on it. And what else would she put on her rice cakes? Maybe some honey or some peanut butter, something else, but she loved the sweets, so she would slather honey on it. And this particular morning, as she was eating her delicious rice cakes, a little drop of the honey fell off onto the balcony. And her very, very loyal servant says to her, "Excuse me, Queen, don't you think you should clean that up? Should I get somebody to clean that up?" And she says, "No, because it's not my problem." Of course not. Of course it wasn't her problem. Well, she carries on, and the sun comes down, and it gets warmer, and the honey melts a little bit more, and then it drops down onto the street, where it starts to attract flies and ants. And the servant comes over to her and says, "Excuse me, Queen, don't you think we should get somebody to clean that up?" And the Queen says, No, because it's not my problem. Right? But what do you think that honey attracted? Those little bugs and those little flies attracted some lizards. Some lizards came over to eat the bugs and the flies, and the lizards then attracted, we've all seen this, the lizards attracted the cats. So the cat came over and started to growl and eat at the lizard. And then what came over and got the cats? The dogs. Dogs came over and got the cats, who got the lizards, got the flies. We all know how this goes, right? The servant comes over to the Queen and says, Queen, shouldn't we get somebody to clean that up? It's starting to be a little bit of a kerfuffle. And the Queen says, no, because it's not my problem. But somebody was there that day and said, wait a minute, it is my problem. The baker who owned the cat didn't want her cat eaten by a dog, so she takes her rolling pin out and starts beating up on the dog. Get away, this is my cat. Well, then the next door neighbor, who was the butcher, says, that's my dog, don't beat up on my dog. And then what happens? The people start beating up on each other. And so the baker and the butcher are going at it, and some soldiers come over, and they're like, well, we can't just have people beating each other up in the streets. So the soldiers get involved. And the advisor comes over and says, Queen, don't you think by now we should break this up? And the Queen says, no, it's not my problem. So by this point, there is a whole big fiasco in the streets. People are hurting each other. Somebody goes to their house and they take one of the torches down off of their wall. They throw it into the window of the palace, break the palace, and now the palace is on fire. So at this point, the Queen and the advisor are being evacuated by the very competent fire department, taking them out of the palace. And as the Queen is standing there watching her beautiful palace burn to ashes, she says to the advisor, you know, maybe I should have cleaned that honey up, because from now on I will never say, it's not my problem. Sometimes we say it's not our problem when in fact it is our problem.
Let's sing one last song in response. It's a song that is a little less well known, and if you don't catch it first, catch it on the second verse, and if you don't want to sing, you can clap. It goes like this. That's close enough. One morning I woke up and knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the sorrow I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and I'd throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. Say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. One morning I woke up and knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the anger I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and I'd throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. One morning I woke up and knew what to do. I'd catch all the stones that everyone threw. I'd catch all the injustice I could in a day. Then I'd take all the stones and throw them away. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me. Don't ask why, say we must all be free. Don't ask when, say you can count on me.
Our closing reading is called These Bodies by Reverend Karen G. Johnson. We Unitarian Universalists, who have long been known to be a bit too much in our heads, have been moving towards a new, more authentic recognition of our bodies, a more genuine relationship with our bodies and in our bodies. Hallelujah and blessed be. These bodies are our homes. These bodies our beings. These bodies without which we can neither have inherent worth nor recognize it in others. These bodies without which we cannot experience the interdependent web of all existence, for it is through our bodies that we are part of the self-same web. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to the great collective liberation of all our bodies. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to all that we can know, to protect against gendered violence, against all bodies, known and unknown, near and far, stranger and friend. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to inhabit these bodies, to honor these bodies, to celebrate these bodies, and to defend these bodies. So be it, see to it, and amen.
Will you please join me in saying our words for chalice extinguishing by Reverend Shelley Page. First, listen and learn from those whose lives are so different from yours. Then passionately speak for justice on behalf of all, that all may live in health, wholeness, and love. Blessings for the journey.
I should have been able to find a key from that.
I apologize. I take the blame. I should have looked at you and made sure we were on the same page.
You all did good.
We landed on the same chord, so it's like this, the gymnastic thing, we're still landing. Test, 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 test. You hear your voice about it? Test, 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 test.
Test, test, test.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch base with you because I understand that you're working with the stewardship email yesterday and received. Trying to follow up and, you know, we were talking about my financial advisors that manage our case because we're just now having to take it. He said that, and I assume this is different than what most tax law is, about, like, you can deduct up to $300 a year for charitable Here, I forgot to do and send directly to like the church. Is not. Those